the United Nations nuclear watchdog just admitted that it cannot verify how much near weapons grade uranium Iran has right now, and that they haven't been able to do it for months. According to a confidential report seen by the Associated Press, the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, says that it, quote, lost continuity of knowledge about Iran's nuclear stockpile after Israel and the United States bombed Iranian nuclear sites during the 12-day war back in June. Now, here's what that means. Before the attacks, the IAEA said that Iran had more than 970 pounds of uranium enriched, up to 60%. Now, that's one short technical step away from being bomb grade 90%. Experts say that that's enough to take as many or to make as many as 10 nuclear weapons if Iran were to decide to go that route. Now, the IAEA says that it can't confirm where the uranium is or even if it still exists in the same form. And Iran is supposed to, based on the current terms, file a special report after events like this, showing where its nuclear materials are and whether its facilities were damaged. But Tehran told the UN that any cooperation now depends on the decision of Iran's Supreme National Security Council. Since the war, Iran's pulled back from working with UN inspectors, and they've only allowed limited access to undamaged sites. Meanwhile, sanctions from the United Nations and Europe have crushed its economy even further, deepening isolation and raising tensions across the Middle East. Now, there's lots of reasons why you should care. For one, when the world loses track of uranium this close to weapons grade, that's not an Iran problem, that's not an Israel problem, that's not a Syria or Lebanon problem, that's a global problem. Inspectors are headed to Tehran this week to try to reestablish access, but for now, nobody outside of Iran really knows how much uranium is left or where it is. What happens next depends on whether Iran decides to cooperate with the UN or if they decide to double down. Now, I want to be very, very clear about this for a lot of reasons. First, I am a strong supporter of nuclear non-proliferation across the board. I don't want anybody to have nuclear weapons. And I damn sure don't want anybody to use nuclear weapons, because the one thing we know for sure is that once that move gets made, once we move into nuclear weapons mode, there's no telling if it will ever end, and there's no reason to believe that we might not see a mutually assured destruction. So let's start there. Second, every deal that has been made with Iran, specifically, I'm thinking about the nuclear deal made under Obama and dismantled under Trump, was an attempt to have fair and reasonable weapons inspections to allow Iran to enrich uranium, because there's lots of reasons to have uranium and even to enrich it besides nuclear weapons. There was absolutely an attempt, I think, to hold Iran accountable and to prevent the proliferation of weapons, nuclear weapons. But let's be clear here. There's no reason, no logical reason, no sensible reason, no defensible reason why Western powers, and I'm including Israel in that Western power net, should be able to determine who gets the nuclear weapons and who doesn't, particularly when they've made it very clear that white nations get them, brown nations don't, black nations don't even think about it. This has been the basic arrangement of power since the signing of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Agreement, which was, I believe, in 1967. And I think it was 1967. I think it was put in force in 1970. We could fact check that, but I'm pretty sure that's true. So against that backdrop, right? Of saying, look, as a global community, we're going to decide that we're not going to proliferate nuclear weapons. We're not going to continue to let these things grow. They decided that some people get nuclear weapons and some people don't. Now, what's fascinating is the United States doesn't have anybody telling it what to do with its weapons. France doesn't, Germany doesn't, UK doesn't. But here's where it gets really funky. Israel also has nuclear weapons. Israel has nuclear weapons, and they're not supposed to, based on the agreements, but they have them. I've been there at their nuclear site. I know I know they exist. The world knows they exist. And at this point, Israel doesn't even deny that they exist. I mean, Netanyahu for years has basically said, I'm not telling you nothing. I'm not answering nothing. He definitely didn't say we ain't got him. It's easy to say we ain't got him. He don't even want to pretend that he ain't got him. He wants you to know he got him. And he wants you to know that they're going to keep him and they're not going to do anything about it. Why is that important? Well, Israel, and people say, why is it always about Israel? Well, in this case, this is directly about Israel, right? Israel has made it very clear that they view Iran as an existential threat, and that they are willing to do to violate international law, specifically the national sovereignty of Iran, by engaging in acts of aggression, by engaging in acts of economic sanction, military intervention, proxy wars. I mean, all of it's happening, and it's indisputable that it's happening. And so, if you're willing to invade a country and violate all the rules and norms, then it's kind of rich to then go to that country and say, how dare you have nuclear weapons? Again, I don't support nuclear weapons for anybody. But if I know that the only thing that allows me to have some sense of safety and possibility of defending my national borders and the territorial integrity of my nation, the only thing I have to do, way I can do that is by having these nuclear weapons, then yeah, I understand why people have nuclear weapons. And it became quite obvious in the last 3 or 4 years, and even more so in the last 6 months, that Israel is going to be more aggressive in enhancing or advancing its vision and its mission of uh, building a greater Israel, expanding the settler colonial aspiration of Israel, of the Israeli nation state, to other parts of the Middle East. And so, if you're going to do that, if you're going to violate international law, if you're going to ignore national sovereignty, then you can't be surprised that people are going to violate other rules and laws, like the Iranian nuclear deal. When Israel did what it did a few months ago in Iran, it was in June, right? So we're talking about 5 months ago. Uh, Israel and the United States bombed all over the place. And turns out when you bomb a place, I won't say indiscriminately, because I think they were quite intentional about what they bombed. I think they were reckless and indifferent to human suffering, but they were very intentional and targeted about where they bombed. Yeah, it turns out it's hard to keep track of what's left when you blow stuff up. And so they've lost track of what Iran has. And Iran is in a position now where they're like, well, look, y'all blew my stuff up. Y'all lost track of what we have. Why should we tell you? Why should we tip our hand? So again, it's not about supporting nuclear weapons for anybody, but it's about saying, one, it can't just be Western nations that have nuclear weapons. Can't just be European nations that have nuclear weapons. Can't just be white nations that have nuclear weapons. Either we're going to fight toward non-proliferation for everybody, or we're going to have an honest conversation about who gets to have it and why. And the criteria can't be because we said so. And that has effectively been the West's argument for a long time. And until the West makes a serious commitment to holding Israel accountable, makes a serious commitment to putting some kind of constraint on Israel's nuclear program, stops funding and sort of underwriting the Israeli apartheid state, and this settler colonial manifest destiny greater Israel project, then we're going to continue to see things like this. So the media is going to want you to think that the big story here is that Iran is enriching uranium and we don't know how much they have, and oh my God, they're losing their minds. That's the Western media narrative. And look, there might be some reason to be alarmed when you don't know how much enriched uranium any country has. I ain't mad at that. But let's not act like the step one of this issue, or that the source of the problem is Iran not reporting its weapons stockpile. No, the problem is the imperial aggression, the imperial invasion. That's the fundamental problem. The fundamental problem is a lack of consistency across the board with how we deal with nuclear weapons, and not just the United Nations, not just the Western powers, also the IAEA. We got to talk about all of it.